Hello, everyone. Great to see everybody back again. I think we're now we're live streaming the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program certification course, teacher certification. We're going to continue on in the character unit tonight. I want to remind the viewers that are watching from all over the United States and all over the world, if you don't have this manual, you can go to Facebook and to the official Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Facebook page, and you can download the manual there and jump in and join with us. We're training teachers. We've got a lot of great teachers, future teachers that are training and getting ready to help this world, which really desperately needs a peaceful solution, as you can see in today's headlines. Some of those things we've been covering over the weeks. But tonight we're going to, if everybody would turn back to page, I'll be covering page 74, but we're going to do a little bit of a review of what Chris and David did last class. If you could turn back to page 73 in your manual. They were going over steps to a moral character, to becoming a very important person or a VIP. By the way, I hope everybody's enjoying the warm weather. Well, you know, it's all about attitude, right? Okay, well, if I have brain freeze tonight, you'll know why, right? Even us guys from Alaska, you know, we do tend to get cold at times. Okay, so we're going to go over these steps to moral character one more time and remind ourselves what Chris and David went over. Now, there's 3 steps at the top of page 73 to obtaining a moral character. And these steps, notice, when perfected, can make you a very important person. Now, does that mean that you're not a very important person right now? Well, of course you are. You know, you're here, you're training, right? And but when we perfect these steps, these 3 steps of VIP, value, imitate, and practice, then we have what's called a perfectly moral character. Okay, when we consistently practice these steps in our life on a daily basis, in our every interaction with one another and even strangers that we don't know. So the first step, the V in very important person, means value. It means consider what's important in your life. How can influences affect what you value, and how can you achieve your values? Now remember what values are. It's things that we think are important, okay? And, you know, like everything else, there's positive values and there's negative values. Some people value negative things and positive. There's a mixture. Some of us, you know, we all have a mixture of positive and negative within us, okay? And what we need to be doing is shedding or getting rid of those negative values that we've acquired along the way. Now, that's not an overnight thing. You know, that's going to take a while, okay? In fact, it's a lifetime of work, okay? Now, consider what is important in your life. How can influences affect what you value, and how can you achieve your values? And if you go back to page 61 real quick, back to page 61, it talks about, actually it wasn't 61. Let's see. Better get my glasses out. Well, influences, yeah. Remember how influences can affect what you value. And on page 61, it talks about influences. And I believe Mr. David Knighton went over these again in the last session about how all of these things like jobs and books and songs and commercials, billboards, the internet, video games, etc., are all influences, okay? And we're going to have to decide, we're going to have to learn we're going to have to educate ourselves to know, you know, how are these things affecting our character? You know, how are they affecting what we value? Because, you know, those things that we're valuing are going to have either a positive or a negative impact on this building moral our building our moral characters. We've got to be very careful. The second one says imitate, back on page 73. In VIP, it's value and then imitate. Beware of what and who you imitate. You know, it says imitating negative behaviors and negative people who act immorally or do things that are not proper, you know, that are not, that break the rules or break the laws. You know, there's laws set out there that we're supposed to follow. And if we're breaking the laws or we're doing anything to bring harm to ourselves or somebody else, we're acting what's called immorally. Okay? That means we're also adopting negative character traits if we're acting immorally. You know, if we're using, for instance, if we're imitating some movie star that likes to slap somebody when in order to deal with situations, you know, to retaliate for something someone does wrong to them, if we imitate that kind of behavior, you know, what kind of character traits do we think we're adopting? You know, are we adopting respectful character traits? Being respectful? Are we being respectful? Are we being you know, remember all the different character traits that are listed. And if we're not following the positive character traits, then that means that we're adopting negative character traits. We got to make sure, you know, that what we're following or what we're imitating is not something negative. Okay? It says, for example, the main character in a popular movie always gets even when someone wrongs him. But remember, 2 wrongs don't make a right. Okay? It never makes a right. And it says if you begin to imitate this character by retaliating when someone wrongs you, then you're imitating negative behaviors that will develop into negative character traits. Pretty simple, right? On the other hand, consider the person of moral potential you can become if you pick out all the positive moral traits and imitate them. I like to say, instead of experimenting with drugs, or, you know, that's kind of a failed experiment, isn't it? Everybody that experiments with them blows up the lab, so to speak. It's kind of like a mad scientist, you know. He keeps mixing, you know, these different chemicals, and he keeps blowing his lab up, but he keeps doing it over and over again, you know, hoping he's going to get a different result. Well, if somebody, you know, the experiment with the drugs, using drugs, it's a failed experiment. Why not instead experiment with moral character, with positive character traits, and practice what you learn in the peaceful solution, and see if that works? You know, like instead of retaliating when someone calls you a name or someone does you wrong, how about being kind to that person in return, and possibly asking them, you know, if you can help them have a better day, right? Consider, you know, what you can do to help that person, because usually when people pick on somebody or they lash out at someone, it's indicating that there's something going on with them. You know, like they have some kind of issue that they need help with. People usually act out when they need help. So instead of thinking selfishly, we should think about how we can help the other person. It says P. So the VIP, the P in VIP is practice. Make moral choices and practice beneficial behaviors that will build your character. Consistently practicing a right behavior makes it a habit, and it becomes part of your character. For example, by practicing being honest, you will become known as an honest person whom others can trust. And that's a great thing, you know, to have that positive reputation. So remember those steps to a positive character, the VIP, value, imitate, and practice. And let's move on now to page 74. I guess before we do that, let's go back to LP 3C and look at number 9 again. Just remind ourselves what we're focusing on here in this step number 9. We're learning that we need to tell students that they can achieve a positive character by remembering to be a VIP, which I just went over. And we read page 73, steps to a moral character. Expound on each of the steps by explaining that step 1 is to be aware of what their values are and how they are influenced to achieve them. you know, it does bear mentioning that there's nothing wrong with valuing, say, money. Okay, there's nothing wrong with valuing money. You need it to pay your rent or you need it to pay your bills. But how you achieve your wealth, if you steal or embezzle or commit some kind of fraud to achieve that money, to gain that money, that's a problem. Okay, so you need to reprioritize, you know, your values in that instance, and you need to make up your mind to stop being dishonest and start achieving those things in a positive way. Okay? And then it says, step 2 of obtaining a positive character requires carefully observing the people and characteristics that we decide to choose for our own. Okay? In other words, picking out positive role models, not negative ones. In other words, we imitate. Do they consistently demonstrate positive character traits? We need to ask ourselves that question. And then the final step is to practice making the right choices to behave in a manner that demonstrates positive character, that does not bring harm to others, but in fact shows consideration for others. Remember, and that's the goal of the peaceful solution, is to be harmless, become harmless, not bringing harm to anybody physically, mentally, or otherwise. Okay, so now we can go on to page 74 and pick up where I start tonight. On value plus influence equals character. It says, being aware of what you value means carefully considering what you are allowing yourself to be influenced by. For instance, someone who views a lot of violent movies and video games and listens to songs with lyrics that depict violence will begin to value aggression as the way to solve their problems. Okay? And so you see, aggression is something that you can value. Okay? It doesn't matter if you go around thinking, oh, I value aggression. You know, even if you don't think that way, if you don't think that you value it, you're still valuing it because you're using it, right? So it says, a person who values friends above all else will be easily influenced to do things they know are wrong just to fit in. That means that they value their friends above even their own character and their own reputation. Okay? Remember what I said about values? There's nothing wrong with valuing friends and friendships, but there is something wrong if you value your friends so much that you're willing to do things like I used to do. I remember going to the parties when I was young, and when the alcohol ran out, they would say, "Hey, buddy, why don't you go open the liquor store for us?" You know, and they'd drive me over to the liquor store because I knew I was dumb enough. They knew I was dumb enough to take a board or something and break the window out and steal the display out of the window and bring the beer back to the party. And everyone was like, "Oh, man, you're great, man. You're great, buddy." But guess what? When I went to jail, how many of those people do you think came to see me? How many of them do you think sent letters to me? Or anything like that? None of them did. Okay? That's not positive friendships. And I hate to even say they were friends, because do friends ask us to do things like that? Absolutely not, right? Friends will always encourage you to make right choices. They won't encourage you to break the law in any way, shape, or form. But that knowledge comes from, taking the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. I know in the acceptance unit that we've been told about, there's a lot of steps to friendships, and unless you learn that and you learn how to choose friends with positive moral character, you would never know that, right? Now it says, bad influences are proven to have negative effects on positive moral character. If you repeatedly watch violent acts of any kind, these actions are recorded in the library of your mind. That's called your subconscious. Remember on page 65, the library of your mind? The things that we download into our mind are recorded, and they're downloaded. And do you think you can get rid of them? No, you can't. They're stored there the rest of your life. But now you can what I call push them down. When you make right choices and you start viewing positive things and you start downloading positive moral things into your mind, you can actually push those things down to where they're repressed, where you won't be thinking about them so much, okay? They might pop up. They're going to pop up once in a while, okay? Remember I told you about that stupid Kung Fu fighting song? You know, it popped out of nowhere, you know? That's like a 70s song. but they will pop out at times, but you can learn how to overcome that in your mind, and you can learn how to push it aside and replace it with something positive. But remember what I told you about what if you would choose ahead of time, you know, set your mind in advance to choose to never download something into your mind that's negative in the first place, you won't have to fight against it later. Okay? So if you make the right choice ahead of time, you won't have to fight against these things. Now it says later, even after many years, these can come back in instant replay, and you can find yourself doing the very things you've seen long ago. Are you beginning to see that it's important to pay attention and be steadfast in maintaining your true values, making adjustments to their level of importance in order to focus on developing moral character traits within yourself? Pay attention and be steadfast, it says, in maintaining your true values. You know, they say in the Peaceful Solution that maintaining your character is like maintaining a car, you know. Well, how do you maintain a car? You know, well, you have to check the tires, you got to check the fluid levels, etc., right? If you don't, you know, evaluate yourself and check yourself and maintain, you know, make sure that we have to make sure that we're doing these things on a daily basis. We should actually be examining ourselves and deciding if we're maintaining these true values. And if we're not, we need to make some adjustments. Because remember, maintaining your character is like maintaining a car. Because if you fail to care for that car, what's going to take place? If you don't check the fluids and you don't maintain that car, it's going to eventually break down. You're going to be on the side of the road, right? In this case, your life is going to be on the side of the road. You know, like maybe possibly you get put in jail, or some kind of problem with somebody, you know, that you have to deal with. Some kind of health issue that might, you know, remember, consequences come from all negative behaviors, right? There's going to be some kind of consequence in our life. So we have to make sure, you know, that we're not doing these things. Okay, it says, we are all bombarded with negative influences every day. Some things we have control over, some we don't. Remember the subliminal influences, the subtle influences that we don't even know are there? We don't have any control over that, okay? But now we can educate ourselves, and we can learn about some of these things and learn how to stay away from them if possible. But some things we don't have control over. But the things that we do have control over, we should, you know, be making a conscious choice to avoid them. Okay, if we know that it's something that's negative, we shouldn't be purposely putting it into our mind, watching it, listening to it, entertaining ourselves in any way with it. I mean, we've got to learn to value a moral character above all else. I mean, that should be our goal. And in fact, I know it is your goal if you're here right now, if you're tuned in, or if you're here in the class. It says, some things we have control over, some we don't. It's up to us to make sure we are allowing positive influences in and rejecting and keeping out the negative ones. It says, do you know the expression garbage in, garbage out? I heard that expression back, I think it was in the 80s. It might have been the early 90s. It's computer language, actually. I think they call it GIGO or GIGO, G-I-G-O, garbage in, garbage out. And it basically means, it's computer language, which means the integrity of the output is dependent on the integrity of the input. In other words, what goes in is what comes out. Or, you know, you get what you put into something, basically, is what it's saying. If you're putting in negative influences, if you're putting in negative values, let's look at it as a bank account. Let's think of a bank account. If we're making negative deposits into our bank account, okay? Negative, when I say negative, I mean if we're depositing negative choices into our bank account, what do you think our bank account's going to be full of? Negative choices, right? Okay, if we're putting in positive choices into our character bank account or our character account, what do you think we're going to get out? It's going to be positive, right? Okay, so we've got to think of it that way. It's whatever we put into something is what we're going to get out of it. Okay, and make no mistake about it, you can be honest 50 times a day, but on the 51st time, if you're dishonest, you pretty much just wiped out the 50 that you had, the 50 honest deposits. Okay, because in order to be an honest person, we have to consistently be honest. That means we always choose to be honest in every situation. We can't call ourselves honest if 1 minute we're stealing and the next minute we're not stealing. Okay, it has to be something that we do constantly in our life and make it a habit. So garbage in, garbage out. Well, let's say positive influences in makes moral character come out. Okay, that's what's going to take place if we start viewing things that are positive, listening to things that are positive. And I struggled at first, years back when I learned the peaceful solution. For instance, I love music. Okay, I love music. I love all kinds of music. I've always been a music lover from a very early age. My parents instilled that into me. And I thought, and movies too. I used to watch movies. I really had a hard time sitting still for any amount of time to watch a movie, but some movies I would sit and watch. But music was a bigger influence on my life. I love music. I love it. And I thought, well, what am I going to be able to listen to, because most everything out there that you hear on the radio, popular music, is very negative. It's got a lot of really, really, really bad messages. And I found out that the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program had a whole catalog of music available. And I actually started buying that. And it was actually the same kind of music I liked. There's a whole variety of different types of music, too. And it was the same kind of, the same music I liked, but it had a positive message. In fact, now I love it. I love it more than the music that I used to like. Okay? But so the Peaceful Solution does have those things available. You can always inquire at www.peacefulsolution.org and find out more about what's available. So remember, let's say positive influences in makes moral character come out. Let's not put garbage in and get garbage out, okay? Let's turn over now. Let's go back to LP. Let's see. My bearing straight here. LP3E. And let's look at step number 10 before we go on to page 75. Step number 10 says, encourage students to read the section entitled, What I Have Learned, on page 75 in their handbooks. Encourage your students to strive to obtain a positive moral character by being aware of their values and influences, by choosing positive behaviors and emulating, that means imitating, the positive characteristics of a role model. I've been teaching the Peaceful Solution since 2002, and I've asked every student, every child, every teenager or younger student that I've ever asked who their role model was. I was shocked when I found out, because I thought they were going to say some movie star or some singer or some sports athlete. Never, not one time did I ever hear that. I was very shocked. Do you know who they actually said their role models were? They always said one of their parents or both their parents. And I would ask them. I would challenge them on that, and I would say, okay, what was it about your dad or your mom that you looked up to? And you know what? Sometimes they scratched their head a little bit, and they thought about it. They always came up with something. But I never one time, I'm not making this up, never one time did they tell me anybody outside their family. Not one time. Which is shocking, because they spend a lot of time on social media and watching films and things like that. But they do look up to their parents much, much more than you think they do. And their teachers. Like I think Mr. Knighton said last time, their teachers. They look up to their teachers. And they're really going to look up to you because they're going to think you're perfect already because you're teaching the peaceful solution. Now, I go ahead and tell mine I'm not. I let them know I'm a student just like them. I'm just a little further along in my education. But we're all in the same boat, right? We're all practicing positive character. And any of us, we can't ever think that, well, I've got this and I'm perfect now. No way. You're going to be learning for a long, 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 long time. And if we ever become prideful or boastful, which we shouldn't because those are negative character traits, we could fall very easily. So we've got to, we got to always remain a student in our mind, because we're all still learning, okay? Now it says, encourage students to strive to obtain a positive moral character by being aware of their values and influences, by choosing positive behaviors and emulating the positive characteristics of a role model, and conclude the lesson by encouraging students that to be a very important person with a positive moral character, they must remember their VIPs. Remember, value, imitate, and practice. So let's go to page 75. And let's look at what we've learned in this chapter. We've gone over a lot of things in this chapter. A lot of time was taken on it, but that's okay because it's very important, for them to understand the power of influences in their life, okay? And sometimes you might have a lot more time with people to deal with them, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes we go to schools and we only have 45 minutes to talk to a group. Now, how much how much of this book do you think you can put in someone's mind in 45 minutes? You can't. You can plant little seeds, little concepts, little principles and tools. You can give them certain little things, but you know what? That's all it takes to get them on the way. One little thing in their mind, one positive principle or positive words spoken by a teacher put in somebody's mind at the right time can set them on a path to a whole different life. Okay? So never underestimate, never think, well, I only got 30 minutes. How am I going to change anybody? You're not going to change anybody. We can't change anybody, can we? Can we change anyone? No. They have to change, but they have to have the information to be able to make the change. That's what you're there to give them, right? So never underestimate, even if you only have a few minutes with somebody, you can make an impact in just those few minutes on somebody's life and set them in the right direction. So never think that way, and never think to yourself, I only have one student. When I started out in Laredo, Texas, years back, I only had one student. But if you're not willing to help that one, why would you have 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 or 20? Or you've got to start out small, right? Everything starts out small. Okay, so what we've learned is, first of all, part of growing up means developing my own values through my own studies, in addition to what I've been taught by my parents and my teachers. Remember what we learned about values. And remember that if we have negative values, those are the ones we need to be dropping out of our life, okay? Part of growing up. And sometimes when you hear that growing up, we tend to think, well, that's children, right? Growing up. No, aren't we all growing up right now? No matter what age you are, aren't you growing up? You should be. We should be growing. We should be growing toward that positive moral character, the peaceful solutions trying to instill within us. So that we have to develop our own values through our own studies. Study. You got to study the peaceful solution. Studying isn't just getting in the book and looking at the words, but it's also, taking and applying, what you've learned. Applying it, experimenting with it, trying it out. And also in addition to what I've been taught by my parents and my teachers. Okay? The second point says what I value as well as how I achieve my values by carefully weighing all the facts play an important part in building a positive character. Remember how you achieve your values, making sure that you achieve them honestly and morally, bringing no harm to somebody to get the things that you value, okay? Remember, there's nothing wrong with valuing friends, Nothing wrong with valuing marriage, family, as long as you're not kidnapping someone's children to have a family or stealing someone's wife to have a wife. If you're not, bringing harm to somebody else or yourself in order to obtain the things you value, then there's nothing wrong with the things that we value, as long as it's something that's positive and moral, that won't bring harm to yourself or somebody else. The third point says, many things can influence what I value if I allow them to do so. So that implies choice. If I allow them to do so, okay? Many things can influence what I value if I, positively or negatively, by the way, can influence what I value if I allow them to do so. Choices, think about choices. Think about the power a person has, that we all have, to choose. That's pretty powerful, having that ability to choose, to make a choice in our life. Some choices that we make might not have, like if we choose grape juice or orange juice for breakfast, that's not really going to make much of a difference, right? Or if we choose to have oatmeal or cream of wheat, one or the other, that's not going to really make much difference. But you know what? Most of the choices we're making are going to have a huge impact on our life, either positively or negatively. And what's really great about choices is we can choose at any time we want to make a right choice and start getting on the right path. We can choose to do the right thing at any point in our life. We don't have to wait one more minute. Okay? But we can also make one bad choice. One choice can destroy all the right choices we made up until that point. Doesn't seem very fair, right? You know how it seems like, I remember I used to go to court and the district attorney would be sitting there reading off, a whole list of stuff that I did, 1972 burglary in a dwelling, 1973 run away from home, 1973 I think it was something about I'll show you how powerful influences are. In 1973, I think I was 11 years old, and I think I watched some kind of cop show. It might have been Columbo or McCloud or one of those old shows, crime shows, and I learned how to call somebody and tell them, I have your daughter, and you got to send me $5,000 to get her back. I guess that was called, what do they call that? Excuse me? Yeah, ransom. Yeah. Calling somebody and telling them, I kidnapped one of your family members and I want some ransom. Well, back then we didn't have cell phones. We had phones on our wall, okay, with a cord, with a dial, rotary dial. And I remember doing that as a prank, right? And I don't know, within 30 or 40 minutes, there was a state trooper at my door. We traced a call to this house, and somebody said that they were holding someone's family member for some money. And of course, I was the only one there that looked dumb enough to do something like that. And I got arrested. I got taken to juvenile detention for that. But I remember, the district attorney, he used to read off all these bad things that I did. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, but I cleaned my room and my mom asked me that one time. How come that's not on your list? No, they're not there to name anything you did right. Their job is to make you look like, Al Capone, basically, right? But we've got to be careful, to make these positive decisions so we can start racking up a positive reputation. Okay, that's something I didn't have when I was growing up. I would have had the peaceful solution. I would have had I would have had the material back then that we're all being offered now. But those things that I allowed to influence me, okay, by watching them on TV, and I didn't think there was anything wrong with watching Columbo or McCloud or whatever show I got these things from. I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. My parents let me watch it, right? Um, that reminded me, because I went back the other night. I was thinking, how did my mom? I remember my mom. She remember I told you she loved Steve McQueen, the actor Steve McQueen. They called him Mr. Cool. He was known as Mr. Cool. Okay, he played in all these cool movies, you know, where they steal things and he get in high-speed car chases. I remembered he came to Anchorage, Alaska. You can look this up. He came to Anchorage, Alaska. I think it was back in 1972, and he got arrested for drunk driving. It's on Wikipedia. I'm not telling you something that's personal. He got arrested for drunk driving, but not only did he, that's the night my mom met him, when he was at the hotel. I guess there was a hotel. They were having a reception there or something. But not only did he get arrested for drunk driving, he actually went down the main stretch of, in Anchorage, Alaska, it was 4th Avenue. Okay, it's like the main drag of the city, main street. At 100 and something plus miles an hour in his vehicle, spinning Brodies, you know, acting, I guess, like he was in a movie. And if you go and read on the Wikipedia page about that incident, it says that after he was arrested, after he got his mugshot, and of course in the mugshot he's doing this, you know, like Mr. Cool, you know. And it said that all the police officers, it was like a big party, you know, they were all getting his autograph and everything. They wanted his autograph, the police. After he almost killed people, spinning Brodies on a main street, 100 miles an hour. But see, these are the kind of things that were put in my mind at a young age that, you know, yeah, that was cool. You know, that was a cool guy. It didn't matter what he did. Didn't matter that he endangered people. Didn't matter, you know, that he broke the law. He's cool. He's a cool guy. So those kind of things influenced me, and I allowed them to do so. But then again, I didn't really have what we have in front of us right now, where I could like learn how to discern between positive and negative stuff. I just thought that, okay, well, that's what people do sometimes. Sometimes they spin Brodies, and sometimes they, you know, do crazy things. Well, they do, but that doesn't make it positive, and that doesn't make them cool. Okay, you guys are cool. Not because it's 8 degrees out either, but you guys are actually really cool, man. You guys are cool. You guys are choosing positive character. You children over here, you're cool, man. You're really cool. You guys are really cool. You guys are really, truly cool. Okay? Truly cool people, they make cool-headed decisions. You know, they don't do stupid things like spinning Brodies, you know, and out in public, driving drunk, endangering themselves and others. Okay? And I'm not down in Steve McQueen either. You know, I'm sure he was a pretty great guy. Okay? But, you know, he didn't have the peaceful solution in his life either, did he? So he needed a teacher. He needed the program. You know, he needed to know that, you know, hey, we gotta start making positive choices so we don't bring harm to ourselves or somebody else. So remember about choices. Remember, many things can influence what we value if we allow them to do so. Let's go on to the next point. It says some of these influences can be negative and others can be positive. Okay? Now remember, a positive influence is something that encourages us to build a moral character, to become a better person. Okay? When I say better person, what I mean is more respectful, more honest, more steadfast, more patient, somebody that doesn't retaliate or seek to get even or seek revenge against people, be more forgiving. That's what we should be striving for in our life. So you can know if an influence is negative if it's trying to get you to go the wrong way. Okay? If it's trying to get you to do something that goes against the principles that we've been learning in the Peaceful Solution program thus far. The next point says, it's up to us to make obtaining a moral character our first and most important value. Obtaining a moral character. Okay, so on page 4 we learned about character, and on page 8 we learned about morals and character. Let's back up there real quick to page 8 in your manual. just to remind ourselves something here. Morals, what they have to do with character. Remember, Chris went over this last time again. Just a definition I wrote in my book. I don't remember which teacher said it, but it said one of the definitions of morals is concerned with principles of right and wrong behavior. Okay, and what's considered positive or negative behavior. Remember, morals, regardless of culture, religion, or environment, there's some values that all people share. They're called moral values. And a moral value is like a line that divides wrong behavior from right behavior. People from all walks of life, young or old, big or small, rich or poor, share some of the same basic concepts of moral values. Like no one wants to be stolen from. Nobody likes someone to steal from them or lie to them or take advantage of them. So those are all moral values that everyone shares all over the planet. And remember, the morality is divided into those three basic categories: behavior and attitude toward all life, human, animal, and plant; behavior and attitude toward possessions and property; and behavior and attitude toward the environment. And moral principles, remember that the moral principles regarding human life means to, accept that all life is valuable, yours and everyone else's. And everyone has the right to live in peace, safety, and security. And we can steal that peace, safety, and security from somebody by spinning Brodies, on a public street, right? And but that comes through education. We've got to learn these things. We've got to study this program. Remember that we just saw a few minutes ago about studying? We've got to study these things and keep going over them over and over again. And then, not bullying and discriminating or name calling, teasing, because that makes people feel inferior. Okay, remember, if you want to be a moral person, then you have to do that. If you want to develop that moral character we just read about, these are the things that you want to practice. You want to practice not name calling, not discriminating, not making anybody feel like they're, not important. They're all important. Everybody is. And then, let's see. And remember on page 10, what's mine is mine, behaving morally toward possessions and property means to recognize everyone owns things and values what they own. So we should always ask permission before we touch or take someone's belongings. And we should also accept their decisions if they tell us no. If they say, no, you cannot borrow that item, well, okay, that's fine. That's their property. They have the right to decide who uses it and who doesn't use it. And then behavior and attitude, toward the environment. Remember, not polluting, not like sometimes I remember getting out of my car at Walmart and stepping outside the car and there's some diaper laying there or something, It's like in 5 feet away there's a trash can, It's like, throw your trash away, The world's not our trash can, Throw your trash away, Don't dump things down the drain that can end up coming back to you and poisoning you or somebody else. Things like that. Taking care of the environment, taking care of your surroundings. Remember, your environment, it's not just the trees and the lakes and rivers and stuff. It's your own surroundings, okay? Wherever you are, that's your environment. Okay, so let's go back to page 75. Remember, it says, it's up to me to make obtaining a moral character my first and most important value. Most people, when you ask them, what do you value? If you show them a list of values, sometimes positive moral character is on that list in the Peaceful Solution. It's there. They don't always choose that. I think I've only had one student that actually said that once. Positive moral character. Yeah, I value that. Right? And I'm like, oh, okay, great. That's great. But most people don't really choose that as their top 3 or top 4. But we should strive to make that the most important thing, and I'll tell you why. I tell this to parents in the classes we have with Child Protective Services. I used to ask parents. I don't know where I got the idea. I think I got the idea from the author of this program. But when you ask somebody what they value, when you ask parents what they value, they'll typically say, well, I value my children, right? And you're thinking, yeah, that's great. You should value your children, right? And so when they tell me that, I'll ask them, I'll say, so, okay, you value your children? Great. And then I'll ask them, so do you value your purse? Or I'll ask the father, do you value your wallet? And they'll say, yeah, I value my purse. I value my wallet. And I'll say, well, why is that? Well, it's got all my credit cards. It's got my ID and, this and that. It's okay. It's got my money. Okay, all right. So would you leave your wallet or your purse laying out on the sidewalk, on a public sidewalk, unattended? Oh, no, I wouldn't do that. Well, why not? Well, because somebody will take it, right? Okay. So where's your children right now? Well, I think they said they were going to the mall, or I think I think they're upstairs doing their math. I don't know. Well, what do you mean you don't know? You said you value your children. Should you not know where your children are at? Because if you leave your children unattended, they could be ruined, lost, or stolen too, right? I mean, I used to, in the Peaceful Solution office that I was in, I had it was in a residential area, and I would actually watch teenagers walking around the block with whiskey bottles and, beer bottles and smoking, and, I knew they were only about 12, 13, 14 years old. And then cars would pull up next to the girls and start, making them wolf whistles or whatever, trying to lure them into the car. Okay? This is how our children are becoming ruined, lost, or stolen, just like our wallet or our purse could be ruined, lost, or stolen if we leave it unattended. Okay? So we really need to, and it would make parents think, you're right. I might not value them as much as I say I do. But remember, that's education. That's enlightenment. It's just reminding them that, hey, remember, you said you value it. If you value something, that means you take care of it, right? We should value our positive character more than anything, because guess what? Let's say you value your family more than anything. Well, if you don't have a positive moral character, is it possible that you could lose your family? Sure is. Because if you're a thief and you go to prison, are you going to be there for your family? So you're not just going to lose your family, they're going to lose their father. Right? So you really, everyone loses when someone doesn't have a positive moral character. So actually building a positive moral character should be more important than anything we value, because in the end, if we don't have a positive moral character and we make one wrong decision, it could take away what we value. It could be the end of what we value. It could be the end of our very life. So we really need to make building that moral character our first and most important value. And I know you've done that because you're sitting here right now, okay? Even though it's cold outside, it's cold in here, but you're sitting here, okay? And you're learning, and you're learning to become teachers. Okay, so the next point says, by doing this, I can then determine what influences can affect my character in a negative way. Remember the influences that we went over about music and movies and video games? Well, there are certain video games that are positive. I've seen a city building game, for instance. I've seen children playing, I don't remember it was city management or city, it was city management, where you can actually create a city of your own and create a government and create jobs for the people and create, all these different businesses and infrastructure. You have to create it, okay? And I thought, well, that's a pretty great thing to teach, children how to do city management, how to build a city. At least that's something that's building something and not, dropping a 500-pound bomb on something and destroying it. Because anybody can destroy something, right? Anybody can drop a bomb or pull out a gun or, something like that, destroy something. But is it easy to build something? No. That takes a lot of planning and a lot of determination and a lot of forethought, okay, to do stuff like that. But anybody can destroy something. That's very easy. That doesn't take much of anything. You know, with a push of one button, you can wipe a whole city out with a nuclear bomb. Okay, so it says, okay. Next point says, I now know that violence and aggression made enticing in movies, songs, and video games can desensitize me to the horrors of violence I see in the world around me. Now that word enticing, it means attractive or tempting. You know, it makes it look attractive. It makes it look like something you should do. Okay? And, you know, they have all the bells and whistles in those video games. It's lots of noise, and there's lots of sparks flying, and lots of action, and, you know, this and that. And that's what children like to see. They like to see animation. They like to see those kind of things. And it can entice them. It can seem attractive or tempting to play. But what we really need to decide is, you know, why am I lured to stuff like that? Like, why do I want to play something like that? Why am I desiring to put a gun in my hand in a video game and shoot something? Why do I desire to do that? Why do I want to do that? Why would I want to do that? Is that something I would do in real life? Let me put it to you this way. Again, I go back to the parents because I kind of drill them on these kind of things when they come to my parenting classes. I'll ask them. I'll ask them if their children play video games, and they'll say, yeah, they play video games. And they'll tell me, you know, some of the games they play. And I'm not really too familiar with all of them, but you know, I try to keep up with certain things so I know what I'm dealing with. And that's something you need to do in the Peaceful Solution. You do need to know you need to be knowledgeable about what's out there. That doesn't mean you go play the game yourself, but you need to be knowledgeable about what's going on so you can help parents along. And they would name certain ones that I was aware of. And, you know, I would say, okay. So, and they would sometimes say, well, it's just a game, you know, they're not really doing it. You know, they're not really killing anybody. They're not really, you know, driving over pedestrians. You know, it's not real, you know, it's just a game. But a lot of them, you know, they know there's something wrong with it. You know, they don't try to totally justify it, but they'll try to somewhat justify it in their mind and kind of sugarcoat it a little bit. So I'll put it to them this way. So would you want your children, okay, so your children are pointing guns and they're shooting people and they're blowing things up. These are actually things you could be put in prison for if you did them in real life, right? Okay, let's say I ask parents, so if you came home, let's say you came home and all your children were sitting around a table and they had a makeshift bong, you know, a bong, you know, and they had these little pieces of paper rolled up. It looked like little hits of crack cocaine, you know, little balls. They had them all little balls. And they were sitting there and they were putting that crack cocaine, that fake crack cocaine in their fake bong, and they were pretending, you know, to smoke it, and they were passing it around the table. What would you think about that if you saw that? Oh, I wouldn't like that at all. I'd be appalled at something like that. And I'm like, okay. But what makes that any different than the crimes they're committing in these video games that they're playing? Mowing down pedestrians, shooting, you know, human beings, or even, you know, acting aggressive toward other people in the video games. And it gets them to thinking, you know, there's really no way to get around that, is there? If you wouldn't want them to be imitating smoking dope, and you would be appalled by something like that, because I asked them, well, why would you be appalled at something like that? Well, it's illegal. I don't want my children doing drugs. Yeah, but murdering people is illegal too, isn't it? Isn't high-speed car chases illegal? That's illegal too, isn't it? So we can't be picking and choosing what negative behaviors we want our children to be doing. Okay? What we should be wanting is them to get rid of all the negative behaviors. Okay? We should want them to eliminate all these things. And we shouldn't want them to be practicing, and we shouldn't be practicing these things. Because remember, imitating and practicing the violent behaviors. Let me back up for a minute about that word enticing, attractive or tempting. Would it be enticing to you to drink a glass of sewer water? If you knew it was sewer water, would you be tempted or enticed to drink it? Would you be sitting there looking at it like, maybe I should? Of course you wouldn't. Why not? Because you know it'll kill you or make you really sick, right? You know that, don't you? I like to think of peer pressure, like we talked about peer pressure last class. Peer pressure, remember, it's not necessarily an external force. It's not necessarily the people that are trying to get you to do something. It's actually the pressure we put on ourselves to feel accepted and fit in, but it's also pressure we put on ourselves because we're not 100% sure that what we're getting ready to do, there's going to be a consequence. Because would you be tempted if somebody came to you and said, or enticed if somebody came to you and said, hey, jump off that 10-story building over there? Just jump off it. Would you be enticed to do that? With no parachute or anything? Of course you wouldn't. Why not? Because you know you're going to splatter on the ground, right? You know that. You firmly believe that, don't you? Well, guess what? The only reason we're tempted to do these other things is because we don't firmly believe yet that there's going to be a consequence if we do it. We're kind of thinking, oh, maybe not. Maybe I'll get away with it. Or maybe it's not as bad as, or possibly we don't really even know that there's going to be some kind of consequence. But if we firmly believe these things, if we really firmly believe picking up a gun and pretending we're shooting somebody is actually the first step to actually doing it, it's no different than doing it. Okay? That's what it leads to. It puts an attitude in your mind. It puts an immoral attitude in our mind by picking something up and pointing it at another human, even if it's just on a TV screen. It is real. It is real. You need to think of it as real. We need to teach the students that it's like it's real. You cannot do that and expect to develop a positive character. It doesn't work. I'm not going to be able to get through all these tonight, but I want you to remember one other thing about this. I know that violence and aggression made enticing in movies, songs, and video games can desensitize me to the horrors of violence I see in the world around me. Remember that word desensitize on page 64 and in the glossary on page 69. I had a thought about that earlier tonight. I remember when the Twin Towers fell down in 2001. We brought a TV to work so we could watch the event. I mean, it was like a life-changing event taking place. And as soon as the second tower fell, some guy came in the room at my workplace and he goes, "Did you guys hear about they canceled the Astros game tonight?" I'm like, okay, wait a minute. 3,000 people just got killed and you're worried about a baseball game? Okay? Even I had sense enough then to know there was something wrong with that. Okay? But that's what desensitization can do. Maybe he saw that movie Die Hard, with the tower. And maybe he saw that before and it didn't really bother him. I don't know. But he was more worried about a baseball game. That's what it can do to us if we partake of these things, okay? And don't make light of it. It's very serious, okay? So we need to really pay attention to what we're imitating and practicing in our lives and make sure that we're choosing the positive things that we're learning from the peaceful solution. That's where I'm going to have to stop tonight. We'll have the next teacher pick up on page 75. And it's been a really great class, a great honor to come tonight again. I hope everybody stays warm and safe. And let's see, the next class is going to be, what's the date today? I'm having brain freeze. Okay, so it'll be on 2/14. It'll be Sunday, 2/14 at 5:30 p.m., the next class, okay? So everybody keep coming, and we'll see you next time.